Welcome to For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where we discuss amazing books written by talented authors. For Book Lovers Only Live Radio is a proud member of the Village Connector Media Network. If you love books, we have a home for you. Now time for your host and chief book lover, Rob Brown.
Hello and welcome to For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where if you love books, we have a home for you. My name is Rob Brown, your internet radio host and chief book lover. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. We have a very, very important guest today, quite possibly the most important guest that we've had on the show thus far. She is an expert on dealing with chronic pain. The Centers for Disease Control reports that as of 2016, approximately 20% of all Americans deal with chronic pain on a daily basis, and that was 3 years ago, so it's probably even more today. Our guest has dealt with her own challenges of chronic pain. She's going to share her experiences and that of her clients. And she's going to educate us about how to deal with chronic pain and control the healing process through her book, Pain Free at Last, How to Free Yourself from Chronic Pain Without Medication or Surgery. Cindy Ann Olson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Really excited about today's show. This is a subject that I've been curious about for quite some time. Our viewers have to have, first, a full understanding of your book for today and what you're teaching in your book. I think it's important for them to have a definition of what chronic pain is. What exactly is chronic pain, and how can a person know that they're experiencing it?
Well, the classic definition is any pain that lasts for more than 3 months. Now, I wouldn't just say that that's necessarily a optimum kind of definition, because anything that has been bothering you, maybe it doesn't happen every day,
right?
But it kind of goes intermediate through your life, or a lot of times they're just referring to physical pain. Now, I think all pain is the same, whether it's emotional or psychological or spiritual. They all are a signal. So pain is not something that we should ignore. So a lot of times people say, well, take a pill and then you'll feel better. Well, you take a pill when you have back pain, likely in years to come, you're going to have more of a problem with your lower back. And sometimes it's said that 80% of Americans at one point or another have lower back pain. And it's simply because they have not paid attention to what that pain was telling them years ago. I have met clients who are actually, one foot is an inch longer than another foot because they unknowingly have been leaning on, and changing their body because they were experiencing pain that became something they ignored. So the classic definition of chronic is that it lasts for a long time, and acute is if you go in and the doctors cut you up and things like that, and you obviously at that point are going to experience acute pain. So I don't say that you can't have surgery. I certainly don't say that you shouldn't take medication. If you get run over by a truck, okay, go to the hospital immediately.
Right.
Take all the pain medication you can, okay, to get you over so that you can focus on your healing. And then recognize you don't want to keep taking it, that pain-killing medication,
right, for
a long period of time. You should try to wean yourself off of it, quite quickly. I have clients that I've met that have been on opiates for more than 20 years.
Right.
Now, because there's been such an epidemic, and we can maybe get into that or not, but people are now being forced off of it after being on it for 20 years. Right. Now, it's very difficult to get them to have their natural painkillers. We have natural painkillers as human beings. It is available to us, and some very simple ways to get it.
And what's the difference between pain and suffering?
I think there's a huge difference. So I say pain-free at last doesn't mean that I don't have a pain signal, but it doesn't make me suffer. Okay? I'm not in bed. I'm not screaming. Every day I wake up and I can't move, but I don't, hold that against my body. I just say, okay, well, that's part of my condition. And I, have a standard operating procedure that I go through. Every day I have to maybe vary it a little bit, but not much. And I'm able to get up and walk around. So what is fabulous about that is you have your own standard the way that you live your life.
Right.
But you might not be conscious of it. I made all the things that my unconscious does conscious, and then in order to move and do other things, because I don't want to have to learn to drive a car every day, right? That's why we have our unconscious really running us.
Right.
So I make certain other things unconscious again. But I go between the conscious and unconscious a lot more than other people.
Well, that's really interesting. I want to dive right into the book because, once again, this is a very, very important subject matter. I want to talk about some specific quotes. In the book you write, one of the most important things I want you to understand is that our experience of pain is inextricably related to our emotions and the stories animated by our thoughts and then feelings we develop over time about the meaning of our pain and emotions. And the basis of this is equally biological, biophysical, and biochemical. The pain processing practice works because it's based in this fundamental truth. What is the pain processing practice?
Well, that's what I do every day. And I call it a practice because it means that I am doing it continuously. Okay? So say someone says, I pray to God every time I take a meal, right? That is a practice that they've instituted. Right? Yoga, is also a practice. Right? There's so many things that we do on a regular basis. So you could say a practice is a healthy habit.
Okay. So the pain processing practice. Okay. And you also write, you experience pain through a reference system recalls the interconnectedness of past and present, an interwoven web of different threads with both biological and neurological that connect our different experiences, programming the memories of past. Those threads that are most similar and pertinent to the current internal and external conditions are recollected. In short, our reference system requires searching the past, checking each time a trigger or insult happens. There is a constant interplay between the conscious and the unconscious. Tell us a little bit more about that interplay.
So when you're actually doing anything that you've done on a repetitive basis, say you learned how to actually have a bike ride. Right? So you have a muscle memory. But you also maybe have something, every time you get on the bike, maybe you're a little hesitant without recognizing it because you fell off the bike and got very hurt, for example. And what happened around that is going to affect your experience of pain. So say your mother ran over to you and said, oh, Johnny, I'm so sorry you fell off and I'm going to take care of you and I love you and you're the very best that you could ever be, right? You're going to say, wow, I'm getting a lot of attention. This is a really great thing, perhaps, right? Or you're going to basically have some kind of reaction that goes into your unconscious, okay? Because a memory like that has an emotional component. So you're going to be able to remember that much more because it's encoded in a different way. And science has really shown this now. Or your mother says to you, Johnny, get up. You're a man. You can't have any emotions. Then, you've learned over time that a man doesn't show emotions. Well, that is not going to lead to a very healthy emotional life. Right? We've had books about emotional intelligence and things like that, the emotional code. All those books are speaking to the fact that we need to have our emotions because if we repress them, then they're going to come up in some other way. And unfortunately, a lot of times they come up physically towards the later part of your life.
Wow, that's really interesting. So
you have a reference system. And I had to call it something. But basically, it's every experience you have goes into your memory, and you refer to it so you can have that experience again. So if pain becomes an experience that you're suffering and you're screaming and you're yelling, then that is what you're going to go to. That's what you've trained your body to do. Instead, if I feel a pain, I immediately say, okay, where is that pain from? What have I done in my, pattern of behavior that has come up? Or what have I felt, right? Right? So my hand is starting to shake. What is happening with that? Or I am having a little bit of a headache starting. How can I start to deal with that? right? So it doesn't have to be around pain. It can actually, it's a reference center. So we're always living out of the past. I know that doesn't sound, but that's why the power of now was so revolutionary for people. They were like, oh my goodness, I can live in the present. People usually choose to live out of the past or they choose to live out of the future, right? They're always thinking, oh, I'm going to be doing this and I'm going to be doing that and I'm going to be doing that.
Right.
That's why staying in the present is so incredibly difficult, but it's so important.
And you were able to basically kind of so the way I understand it, you were basically able to retrain yourself in how you deal with pain. How did you deal with pain before you were able to kind of retrain your mind to say, okay, I have a headache or, my shoulder hurts, what could be the cause? It sounds like you had to retrain yourself to do that.
Absolutely, because I grew up in a household that expected pain and expected suffering. And they basically said, life is full of suffering and then you die. And I was like, wow. But I knew nothing.
Encouraging.
I was like, okay, well, that's what everybody believes, okay. I mean, and when I was young, what else are you going to do? You're going to believe what your family believes. And unfortunately, a lot of people in my neighborhoods, sort of like the New England thing, where we have the kind of the stiff upper lip and this and that. And yeah, life is hard. But, I realized that, I don't know, my inner self or whatever you want to refer to it as, I'm like, I don't think we're supposed to be living this way.
Right.
So I already had some kind of, incongruity that was already coming up, even when I was young. But I went along with it. And I finally learned in my 20s more about, how we have neural pathways and things like that, learn more about brain science. It was much different back then. And I said, well, I should be able to have some control over this. But at that point, they said, you get a certain number of brain cells, you learn what you learn, and then you can't learn anything else. And I was like, the whole, old dog, new trick. So everybody said there was no blame plasticity. And I said, well, it seems like I can learn new things all the time. I don't know. So, I started to say, I can tell myself a different story. And then I started telling myself through positive affirmations and things like that. I just started there. And then I started to say, wow, I'm feeling a little better. That's something. And then I just kept going and researching and learning more about all the different ways that we can actually change. But if you tell yourself, I am 30 years old and I have the body of a 90-year-old and I'm going to be in pain all the time, honestly, you're going to be in pain all the time. So that story, that is why we go to movies. That is why we invest so much in entertainment, because story is the way that we learn, but it is the way that we are, right? All the great philosophers talked in stories. Jesus told parables. Those are powerful stories.
Right.
That can make a difference in how we live our life.
Now, let me ask you, was there like a pivotal moment, or was there an event that made you say, hey, I have to make a change? I can't process pain like this anymore. Was there something specific that happened, or it was just kind of gradual over time?
Well, there was a couple things. First, I saw a guru. I wanted to experience what that would be like. I was a teenager. And I saw that he was basically had a broken arm, and he just he was doing his thing, but he didn't seem like he was suffering at all. And first of all, I said, well, that doesn't seem possible. Maybe he's on some kind of drugs or whatever, but he didn't seem like it. So I went over to him at the end and asked, hello, you can go, down the street, there's a hospital, please, we do get to fix that.
Right.
And I said, but you don't seem to be experiencing pain. And he said, I've meditated for 30 years. So on one level, that gave me hope that he wasn't experiencing pain. And I was like, wow, what is this meditation thing? Because I hadn't really heard about it before. And the other part of it was like, 30 years. I can't wait 30 years. I'm in too much pain right now, because I had been getting migraines since I was 7. And that can be, really kind of intense. And I had all the physical manifestations of it too. So that gave me the idea, well, wait, if he did it, there must be other people. So I started, going to books and learning history and everything like that. And I found all throughout, history, people have said, hey, I've become pain-free. So I was like, well, somebody must have written something, And so I started to learn about mindfulness and meditation and, this and that. And I was incredibly surprised when I found out that people around the world on a regular basis stick themselves with, spears and all sorts of other things to quote unquote get closer to God or for some other reason. Or maybe they've intertwined, pain and pleasure, right? That could go back to the reference system. Right. And I was like, okay, these people are voluntarily giving themselves pain, but their experience is not of I'm suffering, screaming in bed. It is something totally different. So then I said, wow, this is an experience. So I said, somebody must have written about this. And I kept looking. And unfortunately, I didn't really find it. But the other thing that really changed was I was taking a lot of medication when I was in college. But I also had, 4 jobs because I was, making money. And I also had a full load of classes because I wanted to graduate in 3 years. And I said, I can't keep taking, because I just can't keep taking these drugs. And I realized that I was starting to get rebound headaches. That's when you actually take the medication, and when you take the medication, it actually creates the headache. So this is a proven thing, at least in the early 1980s.
So wait a minute, the medication that you take to alleviate that particular problem can actually trigger the problem?
Exactly. Okay, so this is a well-known thing, but it was fairly new at that time, right, in the early 80s. And so I said, okay, well, maybe I should just, stop taking pain medication. Well, that wasn't necessarily a good idea, but I was young and fairly strong at the time. I'm not suggesting that, please don't do that. But nobody had suggested anything about tapering or any of those are good things. So I kind of said, wow, I'm really going to suffer, during this time. And then I said to myself, wait, so pain is not suffering. And when that light went on, I realized, wow, if I could do something about understanding how this pain started, right? The whole idea of rebound. So there must be a cycle here. Then I realized it had to do with my biology. So then I had to learn all about that.
I love the self-study. It's awesome. I think that, our viewers and listeners, they're really getting an education because, just dealing with Western medicine, if you have a problem, go to the doctor and it's like either go to surgery or pop a pill.
Right.
And I imagine that there are a lot of medically trained personnel, doctors, nurses, et cetera, that know about this, that know how to deal with pain in a more effective way as opposed to just popping a pill all the time. Tell us a little bit more about that conflict between, the kind of like the two schools of thought.
Well, Western medicine is built on a reductionist model, okay? And it really started with, I think therefore I am guy, Descartes. So Descartes actually had a theory of pain that he put out in 1640, which is basically you hit your hand and then a nerve goes up to your brain and your brain says, I'm in pain. So he figured that out, and that was pretty revolutionary at the time. And we've been trying to go and figure out this gateway theory of pain that is all based on nerve activation. Now, I'm not saying you don't have nerves in your body. My nerves work a little bit differently than other people's because it's not. And they said that I could get an operation every year and I could be on disability. And wow, wouldn't that be good? See, I wouldn't have to actually work. So I just opted out of that because, I don't think that's a really good outcome for my life. But that made me realize, I got to do other things. So I definitely learn from Western medicine. I mean, I read journal articles continuously, 12 a day, simply because I want to keep up with the science. So Western medicine, if you are in certain situations, like if you have a gunshot wound, really, you're not going to go, I'm healing, and,
Right.
and feel and feel better about it,
Right.
right? But they also are not really dealing with the fact that our diet and our processed food and everything like that is literally killing people. The fact that we have so much sugar coming into us, that we're addicted to that, how that is interacting with the rest of us. They're starting to understand the microbiome, but it's very difficult. So we have bacteria to take all the nutrients that come into our body to make that available to the rest of our body. So that is, we're actually a community. We're not an individual. And I understood that intuitively 30 years ago, but now the science is out. So unfortunately, doctors don't really know that much about it because it's not really taught in medical school. And they also don't know very much about how to deal with, all the things that the mind affects the body. The mind-body connection was unknown until like the 1990s. Now, around the rest of the world, yeah, they totally got it.
Right.
Okay, so that's why they say there's an East-West divide, okay? The East never gave that up. Now the West is starting to incorporate that. So when the Harvard doctor went over to China and became a barefoot physician, he learned a lot.
You said a barefoot physician.
Yeah. So in other words, he was basically saying, "Oh, Chinese medicine. These physicians go around from village to village, very poor people. So they didn't get in cars and such like that. And he learned that they were being taken care of by things like acupuncture. How exciting, but it's been done for 5,000 years, okay? You have an inner meridian system, and that's one of the tools that I suggest people check out. Now, it's not going to work for everyone, but there's acupuncture and acupressure, and that has been recently brought to, as in the last 30 years, brought to America, as in yoga was brought. Those are ancient traditions in certain parts of the world. Now, on the internet, people are going to see that Hawaiian traditional healing is getting to be very popular. So what's interesting is we keep going back to the ancient traditions because the West reductionists saying that everything had to be done by drugs and surgery is no longer working. Think about the fact that cancer treatment is exactly the same 100 years ago as it is now. Okay? So we have, when we get a cancer, you're going to either cut it out or you're going to burn it out through radiation, or you're going to get a series of really toxic drugs into your system. And those three things have not changed. Okay? So that's wonderful. And they've made them better over time. Because when my great-grandmother tried radiation, I mean, she was really irradiated to such an extent that she died from the radiation treatment. Right. And it was a horrible death. So they have gotten really better on that. All right? You can get radiation, can be pinpoint and, such like that. So all those processes have gotten incredibly wonderful, but they've also gotten incredibly expensive and technology-based. Okay. But when it comes to actual healing, you need to actually heal yourself. So my website is called Empowered Self-Healing because I want everyone in America especially, because we're getting sicker and sicker and we're paying more for it, to recognize that we can take control. In fact, we have to. But our ancestors knew this, right? They didn't have all these hospitals with these fantastic, machines and things to monitor us. And I mean, it's fantastic that we have that, but you have to take responsibility. And a lot of times it's a lot easier to say, hey, listen, Cindy, I'm in pain. I can't do anything. I am just going to lay here and take a pill.
Right.
But then your outcome is going to be laying there for how long?
Yeah, how many pills are you going to take?
And how many pills are you going to take?
Right.
Do you really want to give up on your life? Wouldn't you rather play with your grandchildren?
Tell us a little bit more about, you had mentioned earlier about the food supply, and it seems like as in a society we're almost addicted to sugar. Expound a little bit more on the relationship between the foods and the processed foods and the sugar and the fast foods, that relationship to, the kind of the increase in chronic pain that so many Americans are facing. There has to be a connection there.
Right. I think there's a lot more environmental connections to how unhealthy we are than we're willing to recognize. And a lot of it has to do with that our food supply is really put through a very few large companies.
Right.
For all intents and purposes. I'm not blaming them. They're very good at what they do. I mean, to think of all the ways that food is distributed to all the various places, it's a miracle, really. That wouldn't have happened even 50 years ago. But the problem with it is 50 years ago, we would get, milk, right, from our local farm. And it wasn't necessarily, all homogenized and things like that. They finally said, oh, we have to, clean the milk and everything. But that changes what comes out of the cow. Now, what is also very interesting is people had their own gardens. I have been gardening since I was 2 years old. And what has kept me healthier than most is I go out and graze every morning. Now, I moved to Southern California. I'm very lucky that way.
That's
beautiful place. And I can grow food all year round. I grow my own herbs. I have succession lettuce all year long. So I always have fresh greens. I always have herbs, and I always make sure that I have some kind of various vegetables that are coming along that I can pick early. And I have that every day for breakfast. Now, when I travel, like I am now, it's a little bit more difficult for me to eat that way. So I have to, do other kind of practices to sort of make up for my bad eating. But I recognize what that is. Now, I want to tell everyone that if you want to learn one skill that's going to change your health, I know this sounds really weird, but start to garden. And I don't care if you live in an apartment. I don't care where you are. It is possible.
Right, because you can get, those kind of gardening kits where you can, grow
Put
tomatoes.
it under lights,
Yeah.
right. But I would suggest you start with some herbs, okay? A lot of herbs have a real wonderful effect. And, adding it to anything, you're going to just like your food a lot more.
What about the people who are like, that sounds good. I don't really have the time. Let's say I don't have the time to start a garden. What about just going to the Whole Foods and Trader Joe's? Is that the second best thing?
Well, what I would say is there's something really cool now, and that's that people can actually support their local farms. Okay, all across America, there's local farms, and this includes, in winter, that you can go in with your family or your friends or whatever, and you can get farmed produce to your door by a box. And if you actually add it up, it's actually going to be cheaper than going to Whole Foods.
Oh, really?
Okay, so you can get things delivered to you, or you can go to, your local farmers market or something like that. I think Americans need to support who is actually growing a food. If you're not going to, grow something yourself, and totally I get that. But I'm saying it's actually much easier to do, and there's a lot of systems you can put in place. But we won't go there. The point is self-empowerment.
Right.
And you need to empower the people that are trying to change our food system. That's a really important part of it. I'm not knocking Whole Foods or anyone else because they all have organic sections. There are foods that, that have more pesticides put on them. That perfect apple didn't get perfect without a lot of things going into it. All right? So definitely wash all your fruit. And really consider the things that you're eating. Now, almost all the strawberries that we have in America actually have salmon genes in them. So I would say, because of the way that we have actually, affected our food, GMOs and things like that, we've modified our foods. They're not what we used to eat. So we are having a huge experiment on the American people by putting in foodstuffs that have not as much to do with what it was that our ancestors ate. So a wild strawberry and a strawberry that you get at the store today are two different things. They're not even genetically the same at all.
And you said the ones that we get in the store have salmon genes in them?
Yes, because they wanted to be able to grow them over winter. So if they get a little bit cold, because a lot of I've learned a lot in California that I've moved, they are grown in a certain area in California. That's basically a desert that they have put a lot of nitrogen-rich fertilizers on. But it also gets a little bit cooler in the evening during the winter, so they wanted to make sure the strawberries would not freeze. So they modified the strawberries because they couldn't modify the environment.
Oh, okay. That's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I know we kind of gotten off pain, but the point is you need to know what you're eating. You need to know that you have to move. I'm not saying go to the gym. All right? Nobody I work with can go to the gym. I can't go to the gym, but I walk.
Right.
Okay? And I play with a slinky when I'm feeling, wow, I really can't move at all. Okay? I just start with that. But I play with the slinky because it makes me laugh. Right? It's a silly little thing that, has been available, for 60 years.
Right.
And it used to, like, when I was a kid, I would have it go down the stairs. But now I just have it go between my hands. Or I use the Chinese balls, right? Because my hands a lot of times are numb and in pain, quote unquote. But I don't want to experience that, so then I basically keep moving them. And I do the same with my feet. It's very important for me. But your situation is different than mine. And find out what kind of movement is going to work for you. Dance is a fantastic thing. And you don't have to be a great dancer. I mean, there's a lot of hair dancing that can go on, but find what movement you are comfortable with. All right? I'm not a runner, but I can walk, right? I like to swim. Now, one thing about being in pain, any of the aqua therapies or anything like that, or just walking into a pool, right, if you have that available to you, can be incredibly helpful. So what I would say is because that allows you to take that buoyancy, so it will normally relax your muscles. One thing I'm going to just say, I know I haven't given you time to ask me any question. One thing is we have to understand that most of us now are not only focused in the future or in the past, but we're also living with stress. Stress from all sorts of things.
Ton of stress.
Our computer is actually regulating us because of the frequencies given out, our phones, etc. I don't want to get into frequencies, but that actually has an incredible amount to do with pain. But the thing that I want you to take away from this is you can not only start to notice your environment, but you can learn how to go into your relaxed state. So you want to go into your parasympathetic nervous system. And that is the way that you naturally relax. So find a time in your day where you can say, okay, I'm just going to let the stresses go. And if you start to relax, right, and maybe you can do that through laughter, maybe you can do that through some other method, right, to start to, take that stress out of your shoulders, take it out of wherever you, decide to store it in your body. Once you figure out what that is, and there used to be a lot of sound therapy, just like I had feedback when I was very young, I also was able to go into a sound therapist. Now, they laid me down and they hooked me up and they played different frequencies at me to find out what frequency actually allowed me to go into parasympathetic nervous system so that I would be able to be in my calm state. So many of us are stressed all the time. Even when we try to go to sleep, we're still not relaxed because we're always thinking about whatever has to be done or what didn't get done or, my Uncle Harry hates me, whatever it is.
Right.
Don't give Uncle Harry any space.
Yeah. Sorry, Uncle Harry.
But the point is, I want you to be able to recognize you can control, right, a certain number of things about your life, but you can definitely control your own nervous system.
Well, I want to get into another quote because this is amazing, fascinating stuff. I want to talk a bit about how pain transcends the physical. You write, The experience of pain is more than physical as we typically understand it. Emotions are also based in our physical body. Because of this, emotions impact our physical state of being and can literally hurt. Emotions create tension in our body, and tension influences pain. Emotions can even lead to death. We've all heard of the commonly used phrase, "they died of a broken heart," a concept that has inspired works in art, literature, and film. Tell us more about that, because that's another thing, that's another concept that has always fascinated me about, like, how emotions can be so overwhelming that, they're just as severe as actual physical pain.
Right.
Tell us about that.
So a book came out many years ago about the stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people understand, okay, at first we're going to deny it, right? But to go through those stages of grief, I have seen people in maybe that denial stage for 12, 14, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to deny it so strongly, they're intense at all times. So that emotion gets stuck, okay? And just like I say that I continuously process pain, you need to process your emotions to be a healthy person.
Right.
You can't ignore them. You can't, basically stuff them down like lots of people are told to do, right? Be a man. It's a
Right.
terrible thing, So in order for us to actually be healthy at all, you have to be able to experience joy. If you are really brokenhearted because you lost a love of your life, you're not likely going to see that joy anymore. But another problem we have is our pharmaceuticals, the things that we take into us. We say, oh, we don't want to be depressed anymore. But, you're going to, on some level, a healthy person, something bad happens. Well, yeah, you're going to feel awful about it.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to what's going on in the news. If that doesn't make you feel awful, I don't know what will. But the thing is, you have to recognize what can you affect and what can't you. I can't affect anything that's happening in Washington, D.C. I know
Right.
that. So why am I going to spend my time and my emotional energy on that? Now, closer to home, you're going to grieve if you lost your beloved cat or dog, right? Or a beloved person in your life. But that is something that you obviously need to go through. Crying is very helpful, and it's actually healing. But the other thing is, you can't stay there, because then it starts to affect you. So a happily married couple, a lot of times you'll hear one person, dies, and the next person dies a week later because they can't simply imagine them being without that person. Those people, in other books I'm going to write about co-regulation and how that really affects it. But the things that you have to recognize is,
Mm-hmm.
if you are tense and depressed, you're going to feel pain more intensely. So it's really important to recognize that you can change your biochemicals, and that will change the kind of dopamine levels and serotonin levels. But your natural painkillers, and this is what I want you to do every day. Okay, everybody laughs differently. I have a weird laugh, I admit it. But the point is, I laugh a lot.
Right.
And I do that because that's the fastest way to get endorphins into my opiate receptors in my brain.
Okay.
Okay? So it's a free thing to do. Now, even smiling, it's going to make it a much better day. So, yes, you have emotions even when you're grieving, but you can change it if you start laughing. Now, some people need to have comedies. I don't really care how you do it. There are laugh clubs all over the world. There probably is one in your neighborhood.
There's a laugh
A
clubs.
laugh club,
Never heard of that.
absolutely. Okay? So there's a online laughter university. In fact, I had 90 pages of references for this first book, but the book people said no, you can't put it. Nobody's gonna, So I only have a few, but I actually took some from quotes from that book, from that site, simply because I think that it's such an important part of self-healing to be able to laugh or at least smile.
Mm-hmm.
And that begins a healing process for you because you start to recognize, oh my goodness, I can change my biochemicals.
That's awesome. I mean, I love to laugh as much as the next person, and
Uh-huh.
there's just something about a good laugh that really
Absolutely.
makes you feel so good. What was your inspiration behind writing this book? I mean, you got a lot of knowledge, but you decided, hey, I got to put this in a book.
Well, the unfortunate thing is I do read a lot of books. I'm very, very fast at that. But the thing is, I said, someone is going to write this book. They're going to like say, oh, well, it's not just diet and exercise. It's not this. But they didn't. I kept hoping, and I kept saying, you know, because I have a lot of other things I want to do in life. I want to heal the earth. I was really working in sustainability, but nobody was doing it, you know? And I finally said, okay, well, let me get all the things that I've written. It was like 40,000 pages. And I was like, oh, yeah, no. So then I cut it down. So I finally said, okay, well, at least I'll get it down to 2,000, you know? And then I can go to a publisher. Well, they kind of like laughed me out the door. Okay, writers laughed me out the door. And they said, no. People don't read that much anymore. So I went to an editor. They just nilly-willy took parts out. You know, it became a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally basically said, okay, let me, you know, really, you know, cut this down. I actually went through 6 editors, people. But, and they all had different things to say about it and whatever. But the important thing that I realized was I didn't get a PhD simply because I didn't want to have only one lens to look at things through. So the people that were chiropractors and things like that, they're going to talk about diet and exercise and physical things. And there's some really great books out there by that. And then the people that are more psychological and things like that, they're going to talk about some kind of cognitive behavioral therapy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think those are wonderful things, NLP and things like that, all wonderful kinds of tools. But it's not going to solve the problem. Okay, you can change a lot of your habits, and I certainly talk about that in the book and your stories and understand your beliefs and everything like that. There's actually a lot of methods to do that now that are very quick, very different when I started doing it. But the thing that nobody was doing was putting these things together and really saying, okay, these are principles you can actually learn,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can control not only your experience of life, but you can start to really understand how you're living it and what you're doing and what you actually believe. Because if you believe you're going to be in pain, like I was told that I was going to be in pain and then I was going to die, you're going to believe it.
Right.
You know, how many people have been told by their doctor in a way that, I'm sorry, you have 6 months to live, all right? A lot of people, when they're told that, believe it, and then they die in 6 months. They're just trying to follow doctor's orders, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, nocebos, that's a nocebo. And I don't understand. Western medicine understands that is so powerful because they understand what a placebo is, right? A third of the medications that people take, you know, or just simply told, they can get better, even if it's a sugar pill, right? So the thing is, those are very powerful things, but that's just through your mind. So
Right.
if you believe something is going to happen, it's going to.
And there are a lot of people that go to their doctor and they get that same diagnosis of you only have 6 months to live, and that person's like, absolutely not. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to do that.
Right.
And then they live like for another 5, 10, 15 years.
Exactly. Okay, but I would also suggest that the whole fighting paradigm is not a good one. You're not going to fight yourself out of pain, but I'm also not saying, oh, please be friends with your pain.
Right.
Okay? It's simply a signal, right? And it's life-saving. Now, a lot of people who have leprosy do not have that signal. There's other conditions that people don't have it, and they have a tendency to die very young.
Mm-hmm.
So be happy that you actually have the signal, because that means you'll be able to have a normal life.
Now, what did you edit out of your book?
Oh, well, I look at my book as simply an introduction, an overview. So I have written an incredible amount of exercises, for example, for people to actually go through this. I have a few things in here, but I have, for people that get the book, I have 12 downloads for ways to do, various. The first thing, the first principle is noticing and self-observation. Most people have no mind-body understanding at all, so you got to notice. Notice,
Right.
hey, my finger is numb. What's going on? And then you start to do self-observation, but that also means that you have to actually record things. So know what yeah. Unfortunately, you got to do like a food diary, a sleep diary, because if you don't eat and you don't sleep, honestly, you're going to feel some kind of pain. Right? So Americans are sleep deprived. Actually, the next book I'm putting out, I was going to put out the first principle, but I'm ending up doing a sleep book because so many people have such problems with sleep. I never learned to sleep properly, but I went to sleep study after sleep study. A lot of them I got paid for.
That's always good. Get paid to sleep. Yeah.
But what it taught me was I had to learn how to sleep. Okay. And I had to have good, quote unquote, sleep hygiene and things like that. So I had to take a lot of particular things out of the book. So I have 400 different modalities that I suggest, but I know about over 200 myself well, or certified in or whatever. But of the 400, I ask people 12 questions so that they don't have to go through like the 400, like they don't have to be as neurotic as I am on that, but they can get maybe 5 to 7 different tools that might be useful for them. Okay, because there are people that are mind-centered, there are people that are body-centered, right? There are people that live in urban areas, and there are people that live in rural areas. So it all, very, simple questions. And I'm actually getting an app for this done,
Awesome.
so that people will be able to put this in. And then they can really focus on those. But I want you to build your toolbox. Unfortunately, I am having the toolbox book kind of organized and put together, but it's going to have to be like a 1,000 pages because there's a couple pages on each tool. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And yeah. So it'll kind of be an encyclopedia and whatever. Publishers don't like that, by the way. But I actually ended up setting up a publishing company because I wanted to hold on to my intellectual property.
Exactly.
And a publisher now basically says that they own it. So in the future, do you know what I'm saying? Hay House, yeah, I really want it. But but for what I'm doing right now. But I definitely want to connect with other writers and help them through the process.
Well, great. And I want to, that's a great segue to making sure that all of our viewers and our listeners know how to follow you on social media and to get in touch with you if they have questions. I know they do because we've only scratched the surface of how to deal with chronic pain. So I'm excited about this book. They can do so through YouTube, Empowered Self-Healing, all one word, Facebook, Empowered Self-Healing, Instagram, Empowered Self-Healing, Twitter, Cindy Ann Healer, Pinterest, Empowered Self-He, that's Empowered Self-He, LinkedIn, Cindy Ann Olson, and email, contact@empoweredselfhealing.com. And the book is Pain Free at Last, How to Free Yourself from Chronic Pain Without Medication or Surgery, available for purchase at forbookloversonly.com. Make sure you pick up a copy for you and other people that you may know and love that are dealing with chronic pain. This is a very, very important book that's going to impact and change a lot of lives. Cindy, thank you so much for coming to our show. We're really excited about this.
Thank you very much.
And for all of our viewers and listeners who are tuning in for the first time, please join our book club. It's totally free. We have free gifts like coffee mugs, baseball caps, tote bags, all different times of things of goodies that we're going to be giving out for contest winners and things of that nature. So join ASAP. You can join in one of two ways. Either A, you can go through www.forbookloversonly.com and join there, or you can just text the word book to 301-321-8887. You'll receive a message with a link. You click on the link. then fill in the form and then click Sign Me Up, and you're automatically a member. We'll give you a free gift just for joining, and we look forward to you joining our book club. And also be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook for Book Lovers Only, Twitter, FBL Only, and Instagram for Book Lovers Only 15. We're out of time, but thank you so much for stopping by. And thank you, Cindy, once again, for your book. Once again, it's a really important book. It's going to change a lot of lives.
I hope so.
My name is Rob Brown, your internet radio host and chief book lover, and this is For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where if you love books, we have a home for you. Take care. I'll see you next time.